Instead of breaking a child's spirit, we nurture a child's spirit. I believe that a strong will is a great thing. It's amazing. We get our leaders from a strong will. We get our change makers from a strong will. And it can be really challenging, right? It can be one of the hardest things to parent. And if we're not careful, then we will break those things that make that child so amazing because we want them to be quiet or to listen to us. We can easily break that.
You're listening to Clear and Loud, a show about finding meaning and purpose on the other side of shifting beliefs. I'm your host, Josh Harris. My guest today is Amy Hughes. She is an author, speaker, and conscious parenting coach. She's passionate about helping Christian parents break free from harsh, authoritarian parenting and embrace a peaceful and respectful way of raising kids that aligns with neuroscience, child development, and their faith. She lives on the coast of California. Amy, welcome to the Clear and Loud podcast. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I really appreciate you coming on. And before we talk about your book, which is the focus of our conversation, I'd love to just hear about your family. How many kids do you have? What's the crew look like?
Yeah, so we have 9 kids.
Amazing.
And it's a wide range. Our oldest is actually 30, but he was born when my husband was 15. So he's actually my stepson, but his biological mom left right away. So I've raised him since he was 6.
Amazing.
And then our kids are, after that, 23 through 2.
You got
so
a 2-year-old
we have a very
at
wide
home.
range. Yeah.
Wow. That is really cool. The coaching that you do, conscious parenting. What is conscious parenting?
Yeah, it's really, there are a lot of terms you could use, like peaceful parenting, respectful parenting,
Right.
conscious parenting, intentional parenting. It's just parenting with respect for the child. It's understanding that children are human beings too. They're not, they're not like this, thing to just, they're not a thing to break. They're not a thing to,
I love that.
Make yours, but they are human beings and they are who they're supposed to be. And so it's just raising kids with the understanding that we're helping them to grow into who they were meant to be, not break them from being a child and break them from, going a certain way. We're raising them to be who they were created to be.
That's such a beautiful way to think about our kids and parenting. There might be some people who tune into this podcast who kind of know the types of topics that I have. A lot of times I'm talking about like life after making a big shift in beliefs and reevaluating purity culture or different problems in the church, those kinds of things. And you're a Christian author, you're writing a Christian book about parenting. So they might be a little confused as to why we're having a conversation. The reason that I was excited to have you on the show today is because I just think it's such a beautiful way that you're expressing what you think healthy parenting looks like. And whenever I come across people, whether they're in the church or out of the church or Christian or post-Christian, whatever it might be, that are just like trying to live in a healthy, life-giving way, maybe even push back a little bit on their tribe and say, hey, we can do better in this way. Like, I just celebrate that. So that's why I'm so excited to talk to you. Maybe the question for you is, why would you be willing to talk to me?
No, I was so excited to talk to you. I think, a lot of people know your story, or at least, parts of your story. And a lot of people have, seen you go from, where you were to where you are now. And the journey, because you've shared a lot of that journey.
Yeah.
And I Well, I wrote my book because I believe that there is a lot of Christian parenting and a lot of Christian or, ideas that Christian parents and the church will share with kids that
Mm.
actually sets them up to kind of just, be really confused.
That's a good way
I
to put
think
it. Yeah, yeah.
be really confused. I think that we teach things that kids developmentally and honestly emotionally aren't ready to hear.
Mm,
Whether someone in their faith believes these things that they're
mm,
teaching or doesn't agree with these things, either way, it's it's something that a lot of people of faith teach their kids.
mm.
And I think that gives them a poor view of kind of the God they want them to follow. It gives them a
Right.
poor view of the
Yeah.
faith that they want them to embrace as
Mm,
adults. And so I think what we see now, and it's something I feel like you've lived, is kids raised with certain ideas and certain beliefs and certain things that they weren't ready to grasp or understand
mm.
or
Yeah.
shouldn't have had to grasp or
Mm,
understand.
mhm.
And they get older and they have this kind of rocky foundation that just that shakes, it shifts, and they go, one way they could go is, becoming that super judgmental, um, you know, Christian,
Mm.
or the other way they could go is just to go, what, I'm gonna do away with, I don't want anything
Turn
to
your
do with
back on
it.
all
And
of it.
whatever that,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course there's all the different levels in between there, a lot of
Yeah.
deconstruction and a lot of reconstruction. And, it's all, I
Mhm.
think a lot of that is really beautiful. And so, but I think that a lot of it begins in what we teach our kids
Yeah.
when they're younger and the
That's really
faith
good.
that we impart to them. So I was excited to talk to you because you've been on this journey.
Well, I really appreciate that. Tell me tell me about your book, which is entitled Words Like Honey: How to Avoid Unintentional Harm, Model Kindness, and Nurture Your Child's Faith Through What You Say. What's the big idea of your book?
The big idea is that there are things we say to kids intentionally or unintentionally that can harm them and can cause, well, it's divided into two parts. So there's one about the self. It's who they are, how they feel inside, what they believe about themselves. And then the other part is the faith, what they believe, what they think about God, and what they think it is to be a Christian, or
Mm,
and so there's the two parts. And both of them look at it through, what is the parent saying? What is the
mm,
caregiver saying? What kind of words and phrases, what kinds of ways that we talk or ways that we teach these messages are actually kind of working against us and doing
mm,
more harm than good. A lot of the times it's just the simple things that we never would have considered or never would have thought. Like a lot of times we just don't even think about it because it's things
mm.
that were always said to us,
Right.
but we just um, we say them and we don't think about it. And so I wanted to write this book because I have been like, especially for just the things we say in terms of who our kids are and how we parent, I have often said things that I don't want to say and I don't really think about it. Like I'm really bad
Mm,
with talking. I will just talk and I'll like cut people off and I just won't think about it. And so I kind of had to learn to do different. And I feel like if I had to learn to do different, and this is a book that I would have wanted to read myself,
mm.
that there are probably other people who would too.
That's so important. It's interesting how in such a vital task to raise another human being, oftentimes we just kind of go with our default, which is very unexamined at times. It's like, well, this is what my parents said to me, or this is what I see other people doing, or just kind of this is what flows out of me in moments of pressure and so on. And when it comes to parenting, there's no other category that I know of where there's just so much uncertainty. Like you don't want to mess it up. You want to do it right. It's so hard. It's harder than you expected. No one's ever truly ready for it. So I love the motivation you have to help people be intentional, actually think about the impact of their words. And I'm just wondering, was any part of that motivation to write this because you have been wounded by words in some way? Like where did you draw that sense of like, I want to do better. I want to help others do better?
You know, it's interesting. Actually, no one's ever asked me that. But when I think about it, a lot of my, I feel like a lot of my upbringing was pretty respectful. And
Good.
I wasn't raised a Christian, so I didn't have faith as part of my household, but my parents
Right.
were they were divorced, but both sets of my parents they were very, I feel like they were kind.
Mm,
They were loving, and they really just wanted the best for me, and they supported the things I did. And there were of course little things. Like I even give an example in the book about something obnoxious that I felt like my mom would do all the time, and it was just something about like every time I'd ask what was for dinner, she would answer food. She would never tell me what was for dinner, and how frustrating that was for me. And that kind of just became my own trigger as a mom. Then I started like getting annoyed when my kids would ask me what was for dinner. And it kind of was just this like cycle. But overall, my parents, I don't think that I honestly can't think of a lot of things that they said to me um, that were kind of, um, that were hard for me as a
that's
kid.
so good.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's interesting because when I was 18, I became a Christian, and it was actually entering that church culture where I was seeing different types of parenting, and I was seeing things that I hadn't really seen before. And I was kind of going, what is going on? There were some of these things that I was a little like put off by when I first, joined church and was
What did
around
you see
kids. And
was different that was like
yeah, so
disconcerting?
there were things like I heard like one of the things that I was totally like, what in the world? I remember I was at church the first time I heard this, and I heard a mom say to her son really harshly, like, you better mind me. And I was like, what does that even mean? I was like, I don't understand. You better mind me? Like there's just these little phrases that people started saying, and I would hear, and I had never heard these things before. And I was a little, I didn't really understand them. It was all new to me. And some of these ideas that I was seeing in church, things like, I remember, okay, it was actually at church where I saw the first kid I could ever remember getting spanked was
No,
when
yeah.
I was in church. And I was like, this was totally new for me, totally new thing. I remember I married my husband. I was 19. So I became a Christian. I think I was like at the end of 17. I married my husband when I was 19. And I remember he already had a son, and I was pregnant, and I was like, okay, but I don't want to spank our kids. Like, I'm not that
Wow.
we cannot spank our kids. And he'd just been, that's how he had been raised. That was
Yeah.
just common for him. And so he was like, is there anything different? Like, else do you do? And I was like, I kind of explained to him, like, I can't see how that is healthy. I can't see how that is good. That doesn't make sense to me. And he was just like,
Mm.
okay. I'm so grateful. He was just
Yeah,
like, okay.
seriously.
He was totally behind that. He just had never considered anything else, and until I brought it up to him, and he was like, sure. So, but that was kind of, then we had a baby, and that set us off on this different path of now we are here in church and with our children, and parents all around us are, saying these things to their kids and parenting in this way. And, it was very interesting because you'd go to church, and kids would misbehave and they'd deal with it. But when our kids would misbehave, it was always because we didn't spank them.
Gosh,
Like
yeah.
that's why our kids acted like kids because they weren't spanked, but everybody else acted like kids, for some other reason. We were just the we were just the parents that were talked about and did things wrong. And but
I love that you endured that and kind of took that church culture shame on because of
I
your
did
conviction. That's so beautiful.
over and over again with everything we did. It was, yeah, but we believed in this, we believed in God, right? And we
Mm,
believed this faith was good, and we wanted to impart it to our kids. And so we were going to persevere.
Yeah.
We were going to, stick it out. And it's definitely been a journey,
Mm,
but, it really took time for me to have confidence and to be
yeah.
able to like speak to others, because
Right.
you feel you feel kind of so ashamed for a while because everyone's like pointing fingers at you, and they don't agree with you, and that they are like
Yeah.
looking at you like you're crazy. So we had
What do
a
you,
pastor.
I'm just,
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Well, I was just going to say, like, what do you think the motivation is in those church cultures for that kind of punitive physical punishment, spanking, really harsh words at times, all those kinds of things? Because they would have said, we believe in God too. And they have, their reasons for doing that. What do you think that the motivation, like I have my own opinions about,
Of course.
fear and all those things that grip parents
Yeah.
that they feel like they have to do things. But what did you see there?
I think it's just a misinterpretation or misunderstanding of scripture, fear of fear of being the person who's doing things differently.
Yeah, that's true.
And
It's hard
in
to,
a group like that, it can be really hard to just go against the grain.
yeah,
It's, fear of like my kid. It's just fear, really. It's fear
yeah,
of my kid's going to go the wrong way. My kid's not going to follow my faith. My kid's not going to do this. And that's built into them. A lot of theology, especially in American churches. I know that outside of America, there's a lot of churches that are not the same. But I know that in America, a lot of American churches are just, there's so much fear that if you don't train your children, this way and do this
yeah,
thing, then they are going to completely fall apart and
yeah,
everything's going to be awful. And so parents will, no matter what. And I've talked to so many Christian moms who are like, this doesn't feel right. I don't like this. Like, I don't feel like it should be this way, but I have to, because they're told that this is what the Bible commands, that they're told that if they don't do something a certain way, then their kids are going to fall away or
yeah,
whatever. So because of fear and because of what they've been taught, it's just they feel like they have to, and it hurts them. They know something's wrong. They know it's not right.
A quick pause here, friends, to let you know about some exciting live events that I'm getting to do with Dr. Hillary McBride. We are taking the conversation from her new book, Holy Hurt, which is all about healing spiritual trauma, on the road. 3 southern cities, 3 nights this coming February 2026. So Dallas on Thursday, February 19th, Nashville, Tennessee, Friday, February 20th, and Atlanta, Georgia, Saturday, February 21st. Each evening runs about 2 hours. Hillary unpacks the psychology of spiritual trauma. I share some of my story, my own reckoning and repair story, and then we open the floor for honest Q&A. So no church bashing, no tidy cliches, just real talk and practical hope. Seats are limited and the last event's filled up fast, so grab your tickets at holyhurtevents.com. After expenses, every ticket dollar supports Fresh Bread Health and local mental health access. So one more time, that website is holyhurtevents.com. We're going to be in Dallas, Nashville, and Atlanta in February, and we would love to see you there. Okay, back to the interview. It's so hard to go against the grain and hear, listen to the voice of your own intuition or the voice of the Holy Spirit when you're going against what your church culture is teaching. That is
Yeah.
really challenging. I mean,
Right.
I remember as a dad being in a church, and I was a pastor there. The church had a long history of advocating for spanking and discipline and really going the extra mile with training. So it was like all categories of life and faith. It's like another measurement of being really serious about your faith. You're going to parent in this particular style. And I remember going to this church as a single guy and observing like parents instructing their child to greet other adults. And if they didn't greet them in a respectful way and looked in their eyes, they would take them into the bathroom at the church and discipline them. And then if the discipline wasn't accepted, it would go, and so,
Yeah.
parents would be like disciplining their child for long periods of time. And it became this like, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, but this is just the way things are supposed to be done. And I experienced that pressure, even as a pastor, this sense of, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be faithful. I'm not going to be
Right.
a faithful dad and leader. And even having, kind of this comparison done of like, oh, well, you're not being as strong as this other pastor, that kind of a thing, and how that can motivate.
Yeah.
We're talking to each other at an interesting time. The release of your book is coming at an interesting time because recently the psychologist, Dr. James Dobson, passed away.
Hmm.
And the reaction to his death, I don't know what it was like in your circles, but in my little corner of the internet and Instagram, there was a massive response. And it felt like
Hmm.
this moment where so many people were reminded through his death of an era of parenting, and specifically what they experienced as kids in Christian homes, of how his philosophy encapsulated in Dare to Discipline. I've never even read that book, but it shaped a lot of the world that I was in. We listened to Dr. Dobson,
Yeah.
on our radio all the time as a family. But so many people in my generation who are looking back on their childhood, looking back on being disciplined and spanked and, led in ways shaped by his teaching, are just like angry and hurt and, just processing so many different emotions. I'm just curious, did you observe that kind of reaction among people? And do you
Yeah.
think the church that you were in was shaped by a lot of his ideas?
Yeah. So I did. It's funny because I saw both sides. I saw a lot of I think I guess I would be say I'm in two different sides of the internet. um because I'm a homeschooling mom. So I have, I have two sides. And I saw a lot of the the anger, a lot of the hurt, a lot of people sharing their stories. Um I also saw a lot of the, honoring and um,
Right.
and the positive stories. So it was
Right.
very interesting to compare
Mm.
both of the things I was saying.
When you talked earlier about how your approach to parenting is not to view, children as something that needs to be broken, how would you compare and contrast the philosophy of somebody like Dobson with you know, what your convictions are?
Yeah, I'm not a great Dobson fan. I do think that um, the idea of the strong-willed child, that's one of his like best, most
Right.
famous books, and I
Classic
think that
books.
that's literally I feel like the whole foundation of that book is breaking the child.
Mm.
It's breaking
Mhm.
the strong-willed child, and so it's definitely different. It's,
Mm.
teach that instead of breaking a child's spirit, we nurture a child's spirit.
Mm.
I believe that a strong will is a great thing.
Mm.
It's amazing. We get our leaders from a strong will. We get our
Yeah.
change makers from a strong will. And it can be really challenging, right? It can be one of the hardest things to parent. And if we're not careful, then we will break that will. We
Mm.
will break those things that make that child so amazing because we want them to be quiet or to listen to us or
Yeah.
obey us. We can easily break that.
Mm.
And I feel like that is what that I feel like that what that type of parenting teaches is that needs to be broken so
Yeah.
that we can have pliable kids. And but instead, um, I believe that if that that we can teach our kids to use these amazing things that are in them um, in the right way, we can teach them
Mm,
to see good and beauty and want to be people. I we like to teach the fruit of the spirit. That's kind of how we teach who
mm,
God is, right? We teach who God
mm,
is by saying you can recognize him because of the fruit of his spirit, right? He's goodness, he's kindness, he's love and joy and gentleness and patience, and he's all these things. And so we teach our kids that, you may have a strong will, and that is a beautiful thing. Let's use them in ways that promote love and joy and peace
mm.
and it's hard to do. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's easy to
It's
parent and break a
inconvenient, right?
child.
It's inconvenient.
But it is so inconvenient and so hard to not break a child's spirit. And yet if we can kind of just hold on and journey with them and support them, then they just become these amazing human beings. And your relationship is
That's
good.
so
It's
beautiful. I love
connected,
that so much. Yeah. Yeah. It's just striking me how that kind of starting point of how you view your child shapes so much of what happens in parenting. Like if your child is an accessory for you to show what a great Christian parent you are, if they're there to, make you look good and not be a bother or a hindrance or whatever it might be, that's going to lead to that kind of authoritarian approach because then anytime they disagree, it's a problem, it's a hindrance, it's
Mhm.
it's an
Yeah.
inconvenience for your life. I want to
Well,
talk about
especially t
sorry, go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, especially too, if you view them even as infants as these like evil creatures. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we were at dinner once with or at a Bible study, I think, with someone, and we were talking about parenting and one of the ladies said, "Well, even your we had a newborn at the time. Even your newborn, she's just a sinner. The first time she's hungry and cries, she's just, she's sinning. She's just trying to get what she wants." And that
Yeah.
and
Wow.
we're just like, what that's I mean, if you view your children like that from the beginning, then yeah, of course you just want to break them, you
Yeah.
know? But
That's
if you
so
see your
so
kids as
true.
it's just yeah,
Well,
anyway.
I'd love to hear how you approach that differently because many people that I talk to who are looking back and recognizing real hurt that they experienced in the church or in their their family, and even those that are still Christians would look back and say, I want to do things very differently with my kids. How do you deal with the gospel message that for many people starts with you're sinful, your heart is wicked, it's deceitful. Yes, there's this wonderful message of God's forgiveness and love through Jesus, but that emphasis, at the very beginning of darkness and so on being there. How do you
Yeah.
speak about the gospel to your kids in a way that is different?
And so I like to tell people too that this isn't about what you believe. If you as an adult Christian believe that we are all just like born totally sinful and whatever, that's fine. That's your belief. But a child is not developmentally or emotionally ready to hear that. So if
Hmm.
you share if you have that belief, then, that's okay, but that's not something that you should be sharing with your kids at a young age. And so, what we tell our kids is instead of, we don't want to tell our kids. I mean, we don't teach our kids you're born bad. We don't say that to our kids. I don't believe that. I don't believe my
Yeah.
kids are born bad. If I did, I wouldn't share that message with them. And instead, what I feel that parents should share with their kids about that, just that beginning, is that they were made in the image of God,
Hmm.
right? They're made in the image of God, and God is kind and loving and good. And when you give that your kids that message instead of the message that they're born bad and they need to, I think I write about this in the book, something about how, instead of making them feel like they have to kinda climb out of this dark pit,
Mm,
you're giving them something beautiful to reach towards, right?
mm,
They're made in the image of God. Like,
mm.
this is a beautiful thing. And so that's kind of the foundation I think that we should give our kids in faith, is that this God is good, and he is loving, and he is kind, and he is gentle, and he is peaceful. And you were made in his image, and you get to live a life res- that resembles him. You get to
Yeah.
live a life that is good and kind and peaceful and loving, and you get to share that with the world.
Mm.
And that's the faith that we want to impart to our kids.
That's so beautiful. I love that reframing and the way that that gives just so much, I think, hope and identity. It's really beautiful. You address different negative patterns of speaking and parenting in the book. And I wonder if you could, I was just going to list off a few of these, and if you could just sort of comment on a few of them. The first is threats and ultimatums as an approach of parenting.
Yeah, I think that threats and ultimatums are just a natural they're a natural effect of that, just a really authoritarian like parenting. It's, your kid behaves badly, so you threaten them so that they stop, or you give them an ultimatum, and maybe that works for their to stop the behavior, maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't really do anything for, you know, who they are, how they think, your relationship. And so I think that threats and ultimatums kind of just end up driving a wedge between parents and children over time. Young kids kind of start to fear. They fear the threat. They fear their parents. They fear the punishment. And then as they get older, it's just an annoyance. They get angry about it, right? It's just
Mm,
like,
yeah.
you keep threatening me, you keep punishing me, you keep doing this. And I just think that there's a different way we can,
Hmm.
walk beside our kids in their, when they have poor behaviors or whatever, and they make mistakes, and we can kind of guide them. Firstly, we can see a lot of times a young kid, especially when they're misbehaving, there's just some sort of need. It's just some sort of unmet
Mm,
need that they have. And if we could just learn to see that, we can help meet that need. And that doesn't mean you just let the behavior go, but you teach the behavior when you're not in the moment.
yeah.
We always say you connect before you correct.
Mm,
So instead of just threatening and stop doing that, or else it's, you know what, like, let me help you in this moment. And then when the moment's passed, hey, let's talk about that thing you did.
mm,
Well, that's really not the right way to do that? And
yeah.
so you've kind of come together, you've avoided the negativity surrounding, any sort of conflict, and you help with the what's going on, and then you connect with one another and correct it later. And it's kind of a better and healthier cycle.
That's so helpful. The next negative pattern of speaking and parenting that you talk about is comparison. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times we will use comparison to kind of motivate our kids, right? Like, why can't you be like your brother? Or
Mm,
look at so and so. He's way better behaved, or, whatever. And we use these things because we're like thinking it will motivate our kids. It will make them want to do that, but it doesn't. It doesn't motivate. It just shames them. It just makes them feel bad about themselves. And it can be really, really hurtful and really damaging.
yeah.
If cutting, I say, instead of comparing, we can inspire,
Mm,
and that the only person that our kids should really compare themselves to is themselves. You know, am I growing? Am I, taking a step forward? Am I progressing in something? That's okay. That's good, and that's healthy to compare to themselves and to inspire with other things. But comparing them to other people, and especially to siblings or people that they're close to, can really just be so damaging for them.
yeah. There was a section of your book which I was amused by where you talk about Christianese. Like they're just like
Yeah.
Christianese kinds of phrases that seep into our language, and we just sort of use them because we think that almost like they're from the Bible, but a lot of times they're not, and they can be
Yeah.
really unhelpful. I'm just curious what some of those Christianese phrases to avoid would be on your list.
Yeah. So some of the things I would say, not to teach our kids, whether you believe them or not, hate the sin, love the sinner is, I don't think that that is a healthy thing to teach your children.
And why not? Why do you think that's unhealthy?
Well, there's a lot that goes into it, but I will sum it up by saying, especially a young child they cannot separate behavior from person. They don't do that. Like their brain is not ready to do that. And I give the example of like, you'll see a little kid who knows smoking is bad and calls someone who smokes a bad guy
Mm,
just because the person is smoking. And that's them equating this thing with who that person is. And so when we are telling kids these behaviors are bad, and then we're saying, so you need to hate those behaviors, but love that person, they can't separate that. And at the same
yeah.
time, when you're teaching a kid that, you're also teaching them that you're using your own personal definition of what sin is. You're saying, this is what sin is.
Mm,
These are the things that are sin. So hate these things, love that person, but you're, it's totally based on who you are as a person, what you think sin is, um, what you've been taught that sin is, what been taught is sinful, which is, that's obviously a topic for another day, but it is not as that's not as simple as a topic as a lot of people want to think it is. So
yeah.
you're kind of just teaching your kids, hate the people that are doing the things I don't like personally.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm just thinking as you're talking is how a lot of the ideas that you're sharing, which I 100% agree with, I think it's so healthy the way that you think about parenting. And I wish I'd read this book back when I had young kids. Mine are very grown. Although I can still benefit from these principles for sure. But one of the things I'm thinking about is those young parents that are trying to raise up their children in the way they should go and impart their faith to them, and you know they're in their church and they're hearing ideas about parenting. They want to be good Christian parents, and a lot of the ideas that you're expressing I think would be very scary for them because it's giving up a sense of control, and actually it feels a little out of control. Like, you know your perspective might not be absolutely right, so don't say to your kids, this is the list
Yeah.
of sin,
Right.
or if you're not authoritarian and controlling and they end up thinking differently than you about X, Y, or Z, if you don't discipline them in these ways, then they might become this type of person, whatever it might be. How do you speak
Yeah.
to that fear and that sense of, this feels out of control. This feels like I don't have any way to
Mhm.
manage this. What words of comfort would you bring?
Yeah, I mean, the first is this: we kind of just, trust in the sovereignty of God. Like our kids they're not our property. Their faith and their journey with God is their own.
Mm,
And and we get to introduce them to that faith, and we get to teach them, who God is and how he loves us, and we get to teach them all these amazing things about him. And in the end, it's still their journey with God. No matter no matter
yeah.
how we um no matter how we present that to them. We can be as
Mm,
strict and as boxed in as we want to be, and we still aren't in control of it. We just don't have control over
it's so
where
true.
how our kids grow in that. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think what we're seeing today with so much deconstruction and so much, evangelical and so much, all of this stuff that we're
Yeah.
seeing today, I believe we're seeing the result of that type of parenting that was afraid, that was so fearful that they had to do things this certain way and teach these certain things, and they didn't let their kids question things. They didn't let them ask questions or
Mm,
have doubts. They shamed those things. They taught them that this is this is a definite, even though it's not in the Bible, even though it's believed differently in 40,000 other denominations. They taught them this is the way. This is what this means. And we're seeing the result of that. And so it may seem scary to go, you know what, maybe I can allow a little bit of mystery and beauty in this. Um, that may seem scary a little, but at the same time, I think it's actually more, I think it's more honest and it's more authentic, and it actually allows
mm,
our kids to
mm,
journey, to have their faith journey alongside of us, because they're not going to be afraid in
mm,
the future to go to share their doubts or ask us their questions. And so they're not going to be on their
mm,
own as they're kind of picking apart and figuring out what this faith is to them. They're not going to feel on their own, because they're
mhm,
going to know they can come to us, because they're going to know that we are going to be understanding and we're not going to shame them, and we're going to walk through this with them and kind of share our thoughts and hear their thoughts and maybe point them in one direction if we know that so and so may have some answers that we don't have.
mm,
And it's a beautiful thing. It's a dance. And I actually, so kind of when you think about it that way, I feel like it's less fearful, because it gives
yeah,
you more of an influence in their life due to your connection, due to the
mhm,
way that you were just, honest and open and not holding everything so close because you actually don't have all the
mhm.
answers. And you don't have all the answers. You don't. So it's okay to tell your kids that too.
I think that's such a wonderful expression of really having faith in the way that you parent, having faith in God, you know, letting go of this idea that you can perfectly control these things. And one of the things that you highlight in the book is this idea of unintentional harm. I think it's really hard for parents to, they, the best of intentions, they were trying so hard. They were being controlling because they were trying to keep their kids from going to hell, all those kinds of things. And
Right.
the unintended consequences, the unintended negative impact that can come is often something that you only can see later. The fruit from that comes later. And the last question I want to ask you is tied to that. What do you say to parents who now have older kids or the younger years are past and they are looking back with regret because they realized I did speak these harsh words. I did have this authoritarian approach. I did say things to my kids that I now regret. And maybe their kids are, you know, really angry about that. Maybe they're broken relationships. What do you say to a parent who is looking back with the pain of wishing that they'd done things differently?
Yeah. Just say sorry. We,
Mm,
none of us are perfect. We're all journeying and growing, and we all learn. We all come to a place where we're different than we were before. And we just need to humble ourselves and say, "Hey, I didn't know, and I'm sorry. I did this wrong, and I'm sorry." And no excuses, just I'm sorry. And maybe that one apology, maybe there's so much damage there that that one apology is not enough, but you got to kind of let, let your kids forgive in their own time, and just let them know, I'm sorry, I'm here, I love you. And I do think that, repair in some way, repair is always possible, even if that just means that you apologize and it's never reciprocated. That is a form of repair, even just for yourself. And hopefully, your kids, hopefully the damage isn't too far, that they are willing to hear that, and then they do accept that. most of the time, I've found that to be the case. But that simple apology, that simple move towards repair, that transparency and humility. I mean, that's what's so needed in parenting is transparency and humility.
Amy Hughes, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm just so inspired by the way that you express your faith and the way that you approach parenting. And I do hope that people listening will get a hold of your book, Words Like Honey: How to Avoid Unintentional Harm, Model Kindness, and Nurture Your Child's Faith Through What You Say. We're going to put in the show notes where people can get a hold of the book and find you on Instagram and in other places. But thanks for doing this good work. I'm really grateful that you're out there speaking this message.
Thank you so much, Josh, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.